Thank you. Thanks, Penny. Where's table 28, the conspiracy people? They sat me at the wrong table. It is really, truly wonderful to be here. It's a blessing to be with you all. Thank you, Penny, for that kind introduction, and thank you for your friendship throughout the years. I look around, this is such a beautiful hotel. The guy who owns it must be going to be successful somewhere along the way. That was for the Washington Post, in case they're in the back. It's special to be with so many patriots and who share the same concerns and priorities for our country as Susan and I. I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for your support. I undertook a project, and Pam would know this. When I came into the State Department, I didn't come in at the beginning of administration. I came in after about a year and a half. But I had a number of things that I wanted to accomplish, one of which was to undertake making sure there was clarity about the things that are most fundamental, that we hold most dear. And so I created this Commission on Unalienable Rights. That is a fancy word for some really talented people who will go out and take us back to our foundational ideas, the things that you all know, the things you all work so hard for, and put that at the core of what the State Department does. And I appreciated the public letter that 17 of you signed. You should know when we announced it, we knew we were in the right place. There were 400 people who signed and said that was a horrible idea. And if you go look at that list, you'll see that we are headed in the right direction. We have undertaken a very important mission. And I want to talk about one of those things that I am confident that this commission will do. They will talk about this right to religious freedom, the most important freedom in many respects. And I want to do it by telling a story. I want to tell a story about a man named Yusuf, a Uyghur Muslim from Xinjiang, China. He was living in Pakistan when the Chinese government began its systematic repression of Uyghurs back in 2017. As part of its campaign, China began forcibly extraditing Uyghur expats like him back home. And sure enough, Yusuf found himself forced onto a one-way flight to Beijing. But the Lord was smiling. The flight had a layover in Doha. And it was there in Doha, in what was likely to be his final hours of freedom, that Yusuf made a desperate move. He broadcast a plea for help into social media, and it caught the attention of the State Department, and our team jumped into action. Our embassy team there on the ground in Doha conducted superb diplomacy. It worked with the Qatari government to keep Yusuf off his flight to Beijing. We alerted the international community through the UN High Commissioner for Refugees to his plight, and our teams in multiple embassies around the world look for flight patterns through partner countries where Yusuf could stay, even if it was just temporarily. Ultimately, every country was reluctant to cross China, and they declined to take Yusuf. This left us one choice, and so we brought him back to America. We were informed around that time that the patients inside of Doha had run out too. Yusuf would have been forced onto the very next flight to Beijing in just mere hours. So the team here in Washington and the team on the ground crammed what would have normally been a weeks-long vetting process for entry into America into just a handful of minutes. And as soon as we received permission from the Customs and Border Patrol, one of our diplomats, a young, talented diplomat who worked in the Office of International Freedom, used her own credit card to book him a seat on the very next flight. "13 hours later, Yusuf landed here in the United States of America. That story didn't get a heck of a lot of attention here in the press, but I wanted to share it with you today for one reason, because it demonstrates the lengths that America goes to defend religious freedom around the world, and I'm proud that the State Department, that Pam and I are so privileged to be a part of, is looking out for it in each and every corner of the world. You should ask yourself this. Ask yourself, what other country in the world would have done this much to help someone in this terrible situation? Indeed, there were many countries that had the chance, but only America did it. No other country stands up for religious minorities on the scale that we do. In fact, sadly, most other truly powerful nations, from China to Russia to Iran, are indeed perpetrators of religious oppression. And the fact that America uses our massive power to defend the persecuted is one of the most wonderful, defining attributes of American exceptionalism. It's not to say that sometimes we don't lose our way, and sometimes certain administrations haven't done all that they could have. Indeed, for years under the last administration, fighting for religious freedom was just an afterthought. But President Trump, our administration, recognized it as our country's first freedom. And it's found at the very top of the Bill of Rights, so we kind of got it right. And we believe that advancing it is in our foreign policy interests, whether it's popular or not. We've committed your money, $340 million to support Iraq's religious and ethnic minorities, including Christians. It's why I, as I travel the world, raise religious freedom all the time in conversations with foreign leaders. Sometimes it's welcome, sometimes less so. And it's why for the last 2 years, we've had this incredible response from the world. We've held ministerials to advance religious freedom. Countries, dozens and dozens of countries, come to the State Department. Some of you have been there. Some of you have attended these events. Our work on behalf of this first freedom couldn't come at a more crucial time in the world's history. Today, 83% of the world's population live in nations where religious freedom is either threatened or denied nearly entirely. And we know this here, but we take it for granted. When religious freedom is denied, a host of other freedoms are often denied alongside it. This is especially true for women and girls. We've seen this with the enslavement of Yazidi women by ISIS in the Middle East and with the assault and kidnapping of Nigerian girls by Boko Haram. Barbaric situations like these are why I need your help today. And I'm confident. I used to be an elected official, so there's always an ask. I'm confident that with you, with this team, with you as committed patriots, that you'll do more than you've done already. You've helped in so many ways. Many of you remember the case of Miriam Ibrahim of Sudan. As punishment for her Christian faith, she was arrested, beaten, and after she refused to renounce Christianity, sentenced to hang. Miriam is now a free woman, and last year she attended our religious ministerial at the State Department and was able to tell her glorious story. It was there she met you, Shay. She met Shay Garrison here of the Concerned Women for America. Shay says she never expected Miriam to know anything about this organization, your organization, but instead Miriam pulled up a picture of Penny on her phone and said, this woman was my friend in prison. This is the glory of what you do. She never forgot. So many of you had picketed the White House until President Obama acted on her case. And it may not always seem like it. It may not always seem like it. We're here in this beautiful ballroom, but when you stand up for religious liberty abroad, your efforts are a force multiplier for America's interests and values. Great case in point. Miriam, like all of you, is now a powerful voice for religious liberty, even vowing to return to Sudan one day to help her fellow Christians. And so, in closing, 2 thoughts. First, I ask that you continue to stand up for religious liberty, whenever and wherever you can. I pledge to you that my entire team at the State Department will do that as well. Earlier, Benny, you described a moment where a great lady told a parliamentarian, you can be both a parliamentarian and a Christian. And I promise you, as Secretary of State, I will do my best to be your senior diplomat and stay true to my Christian values every single day. God bless you. May God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. God bless you. And I look forward to taking some questions. Thanks.